So what happens, of course, is there's the canvas there. It's built, and the frame is usually about 3/8 away from it, so you can see the edge of the canvas. And there we go. This gets attached that way. Don't touch the artwork, it's a little bit wet. So yeah, it occurred to me, gee, I would really like to make a piece of art that, so if I made this painting and then, let's say I made the painting and I went to a shop and said, well, I need to frame it. Why would I frame it? Often it's to protect the painting, because if it's like a really important painting, not because these aren't, but you could easily damage the painting. So this plane of the frame is supposed to sit in front of the picture plane. If something falls on it, this is supposed to protect the picture. So that's one of the reasons that we frame pictures, is to protect them and give them. The other would be to give them a contact, to say, oh, this is should have a gold frame. I mean, gold frames were traditionally, you know, it's kind of sweeping out like that in gold, because the light would hit the gold frame and then illuminate the painting. So there's all kinds of reasons why we've been framing forever, and lots of different approaches to it. But basically, it should complement the frame, the painting, and it should protect the painting. So that's the basic reason for it. So you okay to stand over there? Okay, nice to see you.
And in your case, like, the frame is the painting.
The frame is the painting. Okay, so there I am. I'm not the first person in the world to paint the frame, am I? Who's the Ivan Hitchings?
Oh, Howard.
Yeah, so there's a number of British artists that started painting their frames, and you may have seen frames like that. They're not that common, but they extended the painting onto the frame like that. So they didn't want the outside of the frame to be a really big interruption to the painting, but wanted to put the painting in that kind of context. So that's it. That's basically it.
Well, one of the
Thank you.
But one of the things that's really interesting about how you work, and I know other artists work this way, but like the paintings aren't done one at a time. It's like one idea, and Zane's working on, you know, maybe 16 paintings at once.
Yes.
And so going from one painting to the next. So it's almost as if all the work is one work. And
that's such a good point. And to interrupt you, Wendy teaches a class often, and I believe it's called Painting in a Series. Why would you paint in a series? Okay, so you have one canvas in your studio, and there you are. You try to put everything in the world in that one canvas. So if you have more than one canvas, you're painting and you learn something from that canvas and you take it to the next one. And then you learn something there and you take it to the next one. You learn that, you come back over to this one here. So it's more of a creative process and not making you feel you have to put the whole universe in one painting. So you're learning something from each painting, so you end up creating a body of work. So it's one idea, and then, you know, you change a little bit, and then they all end up, you know, being of a similar look and a similar idea. So I know all of you probably have done that, and you've done that, right? Drawing in a series.
I think so.
Yeah.
It sounds better.
No, I taught at Pizza for so many years, and all the people in third year were basically working on a series. They didn't jump from one thing to another. They developed an idea.
And so the other thing that I find really fascinating about the work is how it relates to the edges. And people who've taken classes with me know I'm always talking about the edges of the painting. And one of the reasons is just from my own personal experience of, I used to do large-scale installations, and it was great because you never had to think about the edge. Like, you just fill the space. And then I started painting, and I actually became quite anxious about the edge, like how I have to think about the edge. And then I always look at the edges of paintings, and I think it's the area that's so often forgotten in the painting. And I love that these paintings are all about the edge. Like, you've kind of resolved the edge, what I think of as the edge issue, by making your paintings all about the edge.
I'm going to address that, but I just want to get these people into the room.
Oh.
So probably easier for you guys just to walk right through this way. My first job, I was sky mounting, and I know how to get people on a plane. Different wavelengths, so the color becomes very complex because of that. It's like playing a C and an E and a G all at the same time. You can hear all three of them, and that's when you look at a Rothko painting, you can see the sensation of those different wavelengths that the pigments are giving off. So anyway, but it's called a kind of a color fill painting, so you paint that great big area, and so what's to look at? Well, not very much, just these three pigments sending a wavelength at you. So your eye does not focus. The eye does the opposite, it unfocuses. So, so you see people standing in front of a Rothko or any kind of color fill painting, and there's nothing to grab onto. They just see that painting in front of them. Hey, welcome. And so these paintings, I wanted to do that. So this paint, the center of the painting, and before I forget, one of my friends here asked me, she came in and she said, why is there a little square at the bottom of every painting? Well, first of all, I'll digress just for a second, talk, why did I use the square? So a square is self-referential. These axes are the same size as these ones here. So there is no movement in a square painting. There's a slightly circular movement. If I would have made a landscape painting, and this bar came way over here, and that was down there, then the axes would be that way. We call it a landscape format, and then the other one, of course, is the portrait. So it has this built-in eye movement already just by the shape of the canvas. But a square doesn't have that. You just bounce around inside it. You don't go anywhere. So the square is really self-referential. First rule of design. First rule of design. Raise your hand. Often wondered at my funeral. This question. I said this 2,000 times. First rule of design is repetition. Thank you. Too late. Okay, so if you want to do something in a painting, the first thing you do is you should repeat something. Well, what is the painting? My friend Natasha is here, and she builds her own canvases as well. So I built all my own canvases. We were talking about building canvases, and she said, yeah, I like to build my canvas because I get to know it right away before it's even painted on. Your body starts to figure out the scale of that canvas and the direction or whatever else is in it. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but it's true. We work together in the frame shop, so I'm her assistant. So yeah, so you've got this self-referential thing here, and then you've got, I put one more square in the painting. So I wanted to comment on the square. So my friend did ask me, why did you put it there? I think it's the only place you can put it. If you put it over here, the painting would become asymmetrical, right? If you see, can everyone see where it is right there, that little square? That's just to remind me where the bottom of the painting is when I'm painting. Because I don't want to keep turning it over. So they all have a little reference like that. It's kind of like a birthmark. So they all have that little square there, but I think it's the only place you can put it. And I can discuss that later at a cocktail party or something like that. But I think that's the only place you can put it. What's that?
It said you're open to invites to
yes.
cocktail parties.
Yeah. So there's the square in the middle of that, so I've got my repetition. So basically I have my composition. And all of you painters know the hardest thing about painting is composition. So how do you find a composition? What is a composition? So I know all you painters are thinking that right now. Yes, it's the biggest problem. So if you have a good composition, just repeat it about 100 times in different color schemes. You know, I'm absolutely serious because you've got it. So this doesn't have a composition. The composition came from the canvas. The square, the canvas, that's the very basic thing. So I didn't have to worry about composition. So I could really concentrate on creating an interesting surface. The paintings are all named by the pigment colors that I used in them. And wow, I really learned something about painting on wood. There's painting on wood and painting on canvas. As you know, canvas has a tooth and it takes paint differently. So none of the canvases are painted with a brush. I didn't want to have any brush stroke on them because if I want to make a truly abstract, but I really should say non-representational painting, I wouldn't want to have any brush stroke on it because you can see my hand. I don't want you to see my hand painting. I just want you to see painting, the pigments on. So when you put pigments together, you mix them up, Payne's Gray and dioxazine, and they're all listed, the pigments that I use. And so you get them really good and wet, but they don't like each other when they're drying, and you put paint thinner on them, which pigments don't, some really love each other, and some they fight a little bit and move apart from each other. So you see a little bit of the reference of those pigments deciding where they want to sit on that canvas. They're all painted horizontally. Sometimes I lift them up just to move the pigment around the wet pigment. That's how they're made. How am I doing? Any questions at this point?
Another question about how they're made. You said that you painted the canvas and the frame at the same time, but was it assembled first?
No. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, so I got all the strips of wood. The first thing you have, the framing material?
I mean, was the canvas in the frame?
No. Can't do it that way. That's a really good question because this is painted physically a different way. This is painted with a brush here. And so, as you know, there will be brush strokes on this part here. And I tried to get as rid of the brush strokes as much as I could. So I want that bit of paint to look like it wasn't painted with a brush. It just got there. So it kind of just appeared. What was your other question, Diane, or did I?
That was it.
Joanne?
Yeah, I wondered if you had put the canvas in the frame and then painted, because you say that
yeah.
it's,
No, you have to get all your molding. You have to sand it all because it has varnish on it. And then you have to prime it all. Then you have to build the frames. And then you start painting them. And the frames are all being built. The paintings are being made. I don't know who is going with who.
Oh, really?
Not necessarily.
Oh.
And that kind of introduces accident to it a little bit. Peter?
So when you're applying the painting, you have an intention, but you allow it to evolve as you go.
What's the
By
quote
your
about accident?
Your intuition tells you that you
Yeah.
need to go.
My favorite quote by Louis Pasteur, chance favors a prepared mind.
Wow.
Amazing.
And my mind is marginal. But it still works,
But
right?
you prepare, like
There's that, yeah, I'm prepared, and then I'll let chance have its voice in how things go together. It'll all work out. Joanne?
Are you thinking about the emotional quality of
I have no emotion. None. No, I don't want these paintings to have any emotion. That's such a good question, and I'm not belittling the question, but
No, I mean, are you approaching it more as a scientist? Like,
yes,
like
yes.
I combine this pigment with this pigment,
Yes.
something happens,
Yeah.
and then it's the accident
Yeah.
that we might read it
Yeah.
emotionally, or?
That's true. The reading might be emotional. Like red painting is emotional because it's red, but I didn't necessarily mean it that way.
Whereas like Rothko did talk about the emotional content of his work.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
since you brought him up.
Continuing. I've got Natasha.
I just wanted to say that I know I've sort of been able to talk to you a little bit while you've been going through this process, and you've been talking about removing the hand. And now that I see them in person, I'm just shocked at when I look at them. I read emotion like I would look at a Turner painting,
Wow.
and I just it's more of a comment. That's
I
just-
may have
it's
failed.
just-
No, you try to remove emotion. So it's just paint. It is only paint. It's got no feelings to it. But
The
obviously
color.
when it's there,
Yeah.
it has feelings. So
You're not prescribing an emotion.
no,
Yeah.
no.
That's
But
right.
it's there,
Yeah.
you could pull it out.
Yeah.
You're not limiting it in advance.
No. And as Joanne said, I'm like a scientist. However, I really love painting. I often say I'm never more alive than when I'm making a painting. So I guess it does have that edge of emotion in
I'm not a robot. Right?
it. Joanne?
Because you love painting, that's translated.
There you go. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So short of, yeah, getting a machine.
So, Selena, how are you? So Selena's father was a really, really important part of my growing up as a painter and an artist. And I was very close to her father, Fleming Jorgensen. So he's not with us anymore, but I think of your dad so many times. And I don't see any of the Harvey kids here, but Don Harvey was my painting instructor at school. So, you know, you carry these crazy instructors around in your head forever. Like, I think I've tortured so many people. June Higgins, we were in grade 7 together.
We were in grade 5 together.
Oh yeah, grade 5. In her yearbook, she said, like I said I was going to be a veterinarian, she said, I want to be an artist.
Yeah. When I was 12. Yeah. And I finally made it. Anyway, my question is, why did you make this work? What prompted you to make this work?
I wanted to make it a long time. I wanted just to make real simple paintings and a little bit back to the what is a composition, and I better get a composition before I started painting. Well, no, I found this and I thought, no, I can really work with this. There's lots for me to paint. There's lots for me to do when I'm making these things. I don't have to, there's no mountains, there's no rivers, there's no people in them. I can just paint the actual thing that I'm looking at.
Did you anticipate that the shadow would read as black?
Okay, I'm going to bring a painting over. Hi, Catherine. And Catherine and Amber over. Do you need to come into the main room? The main body of the plane? Where they're kind of stuck over there. So Wendy's asking me about this. This is another thing that you may have confronted as artists in your framing. How wide should that gap be? How far should the eye be away from the edge? So there are many solutions to how to finish the edge of a painting, because now sometimes they're 1.5 inches thick. Well, what do you do with that? Well, some people paint it black, some people continue the painting around on it. There's all kinds of things they do. So for me, it was a little arena for me to test what I wanted to do in the painting. So I was trying different colors on the edge, and I said, well, that'll tell me what to do on the interior of the painting. But Wendy was saying that, yeah, this does create this shadow in here, so it is real dark. There was one experiment in the room where I said, well, what if I don't use 3/8 of an inch and I use 1 inch? So there's 1 inch. So they're experiments. I was just trying to figure out, hey, how are you, Daniel? Nice to see you.
I was interested in like the ambiguity, like from a distance it could read as a flat painting, and that the black could actually be paint. And then it's a surprise when you go up close that it's
not
just the
black.
illusion of
Yeah, there's that.
So
There's that
that's
color. Yeah.
See?
So when you look along the side, you can see that edge there, and then you have to calculate the obtuse angle, how much of it's going to show, how bright it should be. Susan Fielders, coming to you, Cornelia, in a bit. Yes.
How many layers of the canvas?
Sometimes there might be 8 layers of paint on it.
The same color?
No. So you lay one color down and then you never repeat it. Don Harvey told me never to repeat the color because you've already got that one wavelength coming. So you don't have to say it again. Well, there's always exceptions to everything, of course. But if you put cobalt on, you're not going to put another layer of cobalt. You're going to do cobalt with some ultramarine and panes mixed into it. So you make another layer that's a slightly different color. So it's like different colored cellophanes going on top of something. And so you can see into the painting just how those pigments are working. Because they all, again, it's like music. You hear 3 notes at one time, but you can also see 3 of those wavelengths coming at you.
And the list of titles gives all the colors in each painting. So we decided to have a scientific approach to the titles, since Xane is like the color master.
We have 7 more minutes. Sullivan.
Xane, why, your decision to put the little square, why did you choose that location?
Well, that was what we talked about a little bit. I have no idea where you would put it. It has to go there. So if I put it here, it's going to deal with asymmetry. So the square has to be symmetric. So to be symmetric, I'd have to put a square and a square, or a square and a square. But I only wanted to use one. That's the only place it could go. If it was there or there, then the painting would be asymmetric. If it was there, it would have. What is that? That when you tell someone to go fast. Prerogative? No, there's another word for it. It's an imperative. Okay, so if you put your square there, there's an imperative that it's going to fall. So there's kind of this action in it. That's where it should be. It's quietly sitting
So
down.
it gives the bottom for painting.
Who told me the imperative? Thank you so much. You know, as you get older, just read some of those words. Yeah.
No, that never happens to me.
So, as you're painting, do you actually document the colors very carefully, or
Yeah,
decide to-
yeah, I've got them, I physically lay them out on a table. So I've got the tubes of paint all there. So I group them into certain categories, and there's only like 15 pigments that I was using at once. That's not that many. Like there's hundreds, right? My color pigment locator chart is over on the wall there. I want everyone to bring their color theory books to my funeral. So, and then there'll be somebody asking, no hymns, just flip to page 53. Now, there was Sullivan, did you get your question asked?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cornelia.
I just want to go back to the idea of emotion with you not wanting to remove emotion from it. And I thought of our response to landscape and to nature. And when we approach something natural, we have an emotional response. But it's not like the flowers who are giving us joy. It's like our response is joy to the flowers. So I feel like all paintings are doing that. We have this emotional response because of whatever combination is happening physically with the colours with our playing.
Okay, so on that, I just said a C, an E, and a G together. It's a triad in music. It's not music because you just played it. As soon as it changes, it becomes music. So as soon as you change from that to a C minor, and for you musicians, you know what that sounds like. It's so full of emotion. It was happy to sad instantly. So the same thing with painting. As soon as you start putting these things on there, it does create emotion. I'm sad to say. I like to be super stoic. Taken, how are you?
Just barely here.
Okay, you look good on the blue wall. Thank you for wearing the earth tone on the blue wall.
Xane, do you want to talk about the blue wall? Like what made you...
Oh, okay, thank you. So, I like
we now have a blue wall in the school.
So, I'm not entirely happy with the value of the blue wall, but it was to so the next step would be to take this painting, match the color to it, and then find a home for the painting, and then paint the whole wall that color, right? So all you would see is that edge right there. So that comes with the sale of the painting. I help you paint your wall.
Yeah, all paintings are for sale.
And you could, yeah.
How many are there?
There's 8 small, 8 large.
Yeah, so there's some around the corner.
There's a few around the corner.
All 16 of them.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, so the other, thank you for asking that question. It's oil. So those of you that paint in oil know that if you paint it, you can't paint it the next day. It needs at least 3 days to dry, otherwise the next coat will start mirroring the undercoat. So that one has to be dry first, so the next one layers on top. So when you've got 16, you're not running back in there trying to hurry them up. You know, they've got to turn the heat up, and those paintings will dry. No, it's
done outside.
part of it's done outside. I paint outside because so the painting. So I'm painting them in the studio, and then I have to run outside and I have to mist them with paint thinner to activate the pigment to move around. So you can't do that in an enclosed space. And then it starts raining, and it's fantastic. All the elements are there. But you can't leave them outside because it's too cold for them to dry.
It's like a big family.
Yeah.
Are you using
I have no neighbors.
rollers and rags and stuff?
Yeah, rollers and rags. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just to get the paint on. Yeah.
That's how I do my hair.
rollers and rails.
So anyway, that's what the blue wall is about. Wendy and I wanted to see what some of the paintings would look like on a colored wall. Because in the framing business, for instance, someone has this beautiful picture, and it's from the 1800s. It's on a beautiful manila paper, you know, that kind of beigey paper. And then they come into the store and they say to me, oh, I like all my mats white and all my frames black. So you've got a white mat on a manila paper with a black frame. Well, I say, well, you know where the focal point in that is? Where the black meets the mat. That's so you put your focal point way out there. So a matting should disappear. You shouldn't even see a mat or a Passepartout. And then, you know, frames you can play around a little bit more with them. But I just wanted to, now you know, ever lose your mind in the middle of the sentence? I don't know where this sentence is going. But it is kind of answered. Yeah. Selena.
How long were you working on this series for?
About 2.5 months. Yeah.
Do you believe that you've resolved this concept, or is there more for you to explore?
That's such a good question. And it's a bit rhetorical because, you know, as soon as you feel you've resolved something, it sets up other things that you want to do. So by the time you've finished, you know, a body of work, and it's finite, there were 16 of them, by the time you get ready to that, you get finished it, you say, oh, now I really want to go and I want to try it this way. So I want to do it in a different palette, do the one on the different palette. But you can only have so many palettes going at once. Karen Jones, what's going on in your mind right now?
So many questions.
You want to throw one out?
Well, I was thinking about the composition aspect and your comment about no composition. But then I was thinking about the frame and the void and the canvas and the square. That kind of creates a composition.
I know. I tried to eliminate as much as possible. So Karen is a super minimalist. She did a series of pieces where she just had 3 squares together. The squares were all one color, painted like a machine. No human hand on them. You have no idea where that came from. So that is such a good question, that as soon as you start, you know, painting, as soon as you start painting, you start making composition and emotion and...
And then the other question that was going through my mind, 2 other questions actually, is how do you think about that void? And I know you touched on it a little bit, and then it's painted, and I'm talking about the void between the frame and the canvas. And then the little square within the square, I'm wondering if in the back of your mind anywhere were you thinking of Joseph Albers?
Oh yeah, so that's another good question. So Joseph Albers and Johannes Xane. Is anybody watching Bauhaus on the Knowledge Network? It gets a little too romantic for me, but Itten's in that. He plays a part in it. But Joseph Albers was a colorist from the Bauhaus school, and he came up with these 233 different colors. And so one of the pieces beside Karen right now, the bar pieces. So I brought one of those back as a reference to what I was working on before that. So those are all Joseph Albers colors. But Joanne's question was about composition. And yes, Albers often used one little piece against another. Now, what would happen if I was totally dressed in black and I was wearing one little bit of green? What do we call that? Someone's going to get a chocolate bar if you get this right. There's the 7 color contrasts.
Color surprise.
Color surprise. It's kind of like that. So, contrast of extension. Who said that?
She did.
Okay, you graduated. So contrast of extension means that one little bit of red looks like red, but if you put this much green around it, it looks like a completely different color. And even though there's that tiny 1 centimeter to all that, that 1 centimeter becomes more important than everything else, and that's called contrast of extension. That's why this flower is so important, right? Didn't have to be any bigger. You could probably even have got it smaller. But contrast of extension, and you ladies, come on, you dress like this all the time. You have one color and then you have one little accent. So push the accent further make it so small, is it still important? It still becomes the most important thing. Matisse also said that a square centimeter of red is different from a meter of the same red. They look like different colors. So the size of a color also changes what it looks like. Wow, so I think we're going to have just any more questions. I've made it through. I can still stand in front of a group.
It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming, Natasha.
And just, you can
Where we came from, this is where we're going, this is what we know, and this is what we don't know. So all there, because that's the only thing I know. Okay, can you repeat that? This is where I came from on the left-hand side. This is where I'm going, because we read a painting that way. This here is the base, and that's heaven. That's what we don't know up there. So pretty easy solution, right? Thank you, John Luna. I've got really good teachers.